This practice is increased when the delusion of whiteness tells someone, you may be poor, but at least you don't have it as bad as being black. But that black person in the jealous person's face has more wealth, success, and opportunity. For people who have really internalized the comforting lie that non-white people believe them to be intrinsically more capable human beings, and then have visible proof that they are nowhere near as capable, the humiliation is intense. The third scenario is about groups of white people defending the white person who has failed to be white. My examples here are going to be a bit longer because I am going to be describing microaggressions and the behaviors around them. Microaggressive acts are the type of things small children sometimes do when they are trying to get attention in inappropriate ways, by acting out or by bullying other children. This makes it quite uncomfortable to call out or even describe because of just how petty and childish these acts are. It can sometimes feel like you are either declaring those acts to be reasonable by even discussing them, or that when you argue against people doing these things, you are embarrassing yourself by joining in with the pettiness. But not bothering to call it out because an individual incident seems ridiculously petty can have a considerable effect on someone's mental health, because the bullying then does not stop. This is real, and the problem is that white people trying to be white do these things all the time. A few years ago now, I started a vocational course on beauty therapy at a local college to improve my background knowledge to support a business that I and a few others were building. From the very first day of introductions, the atmosphere in the class was hostile to me. We were all asked to introduce ourselves. But because I know how British people can get sometimes, being judgmental over class backgrounds, I did not speak up at first, so I could assess how people were talking. When the conversation got to me, I followed in describing why I was on the course and what I wanted to get out of it. I described that I was there to learn some skills to support the startup business I was part of. And rather than studying in London where I was working, my husband, then fiancé, offered to pay for the course here because it was a good opportunity to see more of me, as he was living in a different city at that time. The reaction of the other students when they heard this was almost universally, who does she think she is? And one of the students, let's call her Mandy, decided to spend the rest of the first class making snide comments to everything I said. I ignored this foolishness and just paid attention to the tutor, recognizing the behavior for what it is: insecure jealousy. As I went to the classes every week, Mandy and her friend, call her Joe, would find ways to repeatedly interrupt me when I was talking, make snide and sarcastic comments to the questions I asked of the tutor, and make sure that they were sent gossiping about me together in the way that little schoolyard gangs do, using exaggerated disdainful glances to ensure that the other person knows they were being talked about and are not liked or respected. This childish behavior, whilst irritating, was ignorable, and I never bothered to respond to it. But what became unignorable was when my refusal to react to their childishness was treated by other students as a reason to be sympathetic to Maddie and Joe, to sympathize with their uncomfortableness in failing to bully and dominate me, and to join them in solidarity with their unpleasantness by interrupting and shutting me down in class every time I said anything. I say solidarity because the reactions of the other students to my ignoring Maddie and Joe's idiocy were the same facial and body language responses any normal person naturally exhibits when emotionally supporting someone who has been unjustifiably denigrated or dismissed. See here that I had not said anything back to Maddie or Joe. I had not sneered at their words or been disdainful about what they had said to me. I had just ignored them when they attempted to dominate and oppress me. And then when they, as far as I saw, reacted as though their failure to bully me was an insult to them, and got visibly uncomfortable, and often doubled down on their attempts at denigration. The other students then rallied around and emotionally comforted them by joining them in what they had been trying to do. The tutor herself was not separate from this, and whilst she never actually made direct attempts to belittle me, she often ignored other people doing so when it was right in her face. Eventually, after a few weeks of this, I found myself being unwilling to speak up in class because I just didn't want to be immediately talked over. And I was dressing down when going to class, attempting to reduce the background gossip about me showing off with my normal style of dress. I wrote to the tutor of the class complaining that I was having difficulty because of Maddie and Joe's continuing prejudiced cliquey attempts at one-upmanship. I wrote that I did not particularly want nor need to mediate anything. It would suffice to just ensure that I did not ever have to work with either of them again. This resulted in my tutor agreeing to ensure that I would not be required to work with them. However, the situation did not particularly improve because other students in the room, the class, began to start joining in with Maddie and Joe's behavior. Although one of them, an older lady, I call her Sarah, did not do this. And whilst she did not speak out, possibly from fear of being targeted herself, she consistently acted with sincere friendliness in conversation with me. There was a particular incident when my husband was being a practice subject for me and having his nails done. We were just aimlessly chatting and discussing things, behaving unbothered, which I was by the attempts of the other students to bully me. Walking in the bed next to me was one of the older women in the class who just could not hold in her irritation at how I just didn't care, seeing fit to angrily drag the dividing curtain across me as my fiancé and I chatted. We did not bother to respond to this, although I think we may have giggled at each other at our foolishness. When I left the class that day, I had changed out of the class uniform into my normal clothing, but I'd forgotten my favorite pen. While my fiancé was waiting, I went back up to the classroom to get my pen, and there were some of the other students still there in the room. On expressing my relief at finding my pen on one of the tables, I was immediately sneered at by one of them. "You mean you came back for a pen?" And the other students in the room joined in with expressions of disdain. One person even responding as though I was actually arguing with them. "Really? This behavior by the group was straightforward group bullying. Rather than waste my time complaining to the tutor again, I set up a meeting with the college's assistant principal for policy and quality control to talk about the behavior of the other students and to complain about the tutor's failure to coach their attitude and behavior. Even as I am explaining this now today, it seems a bit weird. Because this is what parents may have to do when supporting their kids in school. And I was having to report adults through the college's management chain for petty behavior you might expect from a group of young teenagers behaving particularly foolishly. When I described my experiences to the assistant principal, I got quite emotional about it. I hadn't realized just how much I had been affected by the constant low-level hostility for me. What today is named as harassment through repeated microaggression. The assistant principal very quickly declared the other students' behavior to be jealousy. She said that she had lived in Africa and seen poor, middle class, rich, everyone. And that this jealousy is caused by the nonsense that these people watch on TV. She declared that these are also older people joining in, adults, expressing disdain for their behavior. And added that they should not be minded anyway because they are all on benefits and you are the only one actually paying for the cost. Unfortunately, this statement by her is both accusing them of bad moral character and also true. I am not saying that people on benefits have bad moral character, because that is what the European 1% have always used to denigrate people poorer than them, and then used that to excuse themselves of not sharing the wealth that is stole from those very same people. The culture of the UK teaches people how to resist this denigration by the 1%. They are taught that it is acceptable to make yourself feel better about having less wealth than someone else through slandering and denigrating back at them. The culture also teaches people to then emotionally support someone else's hurt self-esteem, that it is socially acceptable to join in with their bad behavior towards the person or people that triggered their jealousy. This practice is increased when the delusion of whiteness tells someone, you may be poor, but at least you don't have it as bad as being black. But that black person in a jealous person's face has more wealth, success, and opportunity. For people who have really internalized the comforting lie that non-white people believe them to be intrinsically more capable human beings, and then have visible proof that they are nowhere near as capable, the humiliation is intense. Getting back to my story about the beauty course I took, I asked the assistant principal if she could please get the tutor of my course to just deal with the behavior of the other students, as this was affecting my ability to study and I was paying for the course. She also said that another student, Chinese, had experienced something similar from people in a similar course, and that they had ended up trying to hide the labels on their clothing just to ensure they were not accused of showing off their wealth. So she had seen and dealt with this sort of issue before. The assistant principal was very apologetic that she was moving on to a new job in the new year. We met around mid-December. She said that this meant she would not be able to follow this up themselves, but that they would speak with my tutor before they left to ensure that it got sorted out. The assistant principal had obviously spoken with my tutor before she left, because I quickly received an unsolicited email from the tutor declaring that she would handle things in the new year. The particular words she used in the email were supportive, but she still responded in a way that made it clear. Look at what I am doing. I am being supportive, and I am demonstrating that I am fixing things without actually fixing them, as I later saw. In the new year, my husband and I had a meeting with the tutor. I brought him with me as a witness because these people lie too much when they think they can get away with these things. At the meeting, the tutor said all the right phrases, but there was an undertone of, I think you are making this bigger than what it is. An example of this was where the tutor suggested that some of the difficulties may just be differences in communication style. That because I am quite a forthright person like her, sometimes I may have been interpreted differently than I intended. I recognized this for what it was. A subtle attempt to lay the groundwork for an accusation that I was shouting unnecessarily at people. This is a familiar, common accusation that is often leveled by white people at non-white people when they respond to being shouted at by also shouting back. It is really a complaint that the non-white person is not being subservient enough when they are being shouted at by a white person. Wise to this conniving trickery, I preempted the tutor by declaring that I realize I have quite a loud voice that carries sometimes, which is why when I have requested a private conversation in the past, I have asked that we move to a corridor or the next door room. This stopped dead our accusatory framing, because I had not just admitted knowledge of a personal flaw in that area, I had also demonstrated how I respectfully handled that flaw in a way that she could not refute. This utilization of truthful facts to tell a lie, not just a falsehood, is a common tactic of white people who believe themselves to be in positions of authority, and then use that authority to get away with either themselves or others trying to be white. Despite this attempt at manipulation, I did get assurances that something would be done about the behavior of Mandy Joe and the other students. I was also asked to make sure that I reported any further problems or concerns about bad behavior towards me. At the next lesson, the tutor began the class with a short speech on the importance of respecting other students and the college's deep intolerance of bullying. The resulting good behavior of the other students lasted about one lesson. And then the microaggressions were back. The tutor seemed to be ignoring it, though. About a month and a half later, we were given an assignment where students from another advanced class were acting as clients for us. One of these students, who was friends with either Maddie or Joe, saw fit to be consistently rude and disdainful to me. So I complained again, as I was asked to. I requested that I did not want any particular action to be taken, other than ensuring that I did not have to work with this person again. However, my tutor saw fit to escalate my complaint through the formal channels, because the college takes all instances of bullying seriously. And she gave the excuse that this had to be handled this way because the other person was under the instruction of a different tutor. I quickly requested both tutors to not interrogate the other woman, because this was likely to cause a bad environment for me with inevitable gossiping. I had no expectation that the senior student could keep their mouth shut and maintain confidentiality. I then had to formally present what I had complained about in a meeting at department level, which my fiancé attended with the senior student's tutor and also the department head. This meeting did not go well. My experiences were consistently minimized. The behavior of the other students was excused. And after repeated insistence for the college to present a meaningful resolution, I was offered mediation as a solution to my problem. By now, I had little confidence that the college would resolve things properly, particularly as the previous vice principal had left. So I declined to accept mediation and requested a refund of my fees. Although, at the former complaint meeting, I had been assured that a refund was perfectly possible should I choose to request one. When I applied in writing, as suggested, my request was declined because I had refused the presented solution of mediation at the former meeting. This is a standard tactic that people who like the idea of whiteness often employ, utilizing the bureaucratic system to give technical reasons why exclusionary behaviors have to be overlooked. Because you refused to get things handled in the way we want. So, we now have no obligation to support you. After my refund request was refused, I wrote directly to the principal of the college, threatening bad publicity if they didn't override the bureaucratic ruling of the beauty therapy department, and implying legal action was likely if they didn't comply. The principal of the college immediately refunded my money and gave me a written apology on behalf of the college and its staff. My second example of when white people expect supportive solidarity from their group is from a business startup course that I took. There are two events that I would like to describe, but I am going to describe the second incident first because this way around explains my points better. The business startup course was split into two sets of classes, and the tutors were different in each set, although both of them were white people, which, as you will see, is significant. When I started the first lesson of the second set, most of the students were new and had not been together during the first course, except myself and one other person. The tutor was asking the students for their opinion on the topic he had just described. Everyone was being asked in turn for their feedback. But when it came to my turn, another student immediately started interrupting me as I spoke. They were sarcastically saying, "Uh-huh," "Oh, yes," or "All right," rolling their eyes at my words every time that I spoke, and making exaggerated sounds of being frustrated and tired that I was even saying anything. Often, before I even had time to speak my words properly. At first, I ignored this and just responded to the tutor's questions, concentrating on why I was actually there. But as the man, and it was a man, an adult, at least in his early 30s, kept doing this, none of the people in the room treated this as abnormal. It was only the other black woman in the room who started giggling uncomfortably at the way he was repeatedly interrupting me. She clearly thought the guy was acting crazily, but was unsure of how she should respond, not knowing what the outcome towards her from the other students might be. You need to consider the context here. This was several years before the events of George Floyd's murder and the "let's call it out" movement. So there was, and sometimes still is, a very real environment of fear for most non-white people. That the aggressive whiteness solidarity of a group may be turned on them if they defended others too strongly. What was really pitiful about this situation was that the other white people in the room could all see how this person was repeatedly trying to get my opinions dismissed by the group as I spoke. And yet, none of them spoke up in the face of such an obviously idiotic display of insecurity, including the tutor. I had never seen this man in my life before being in class with him that day, nor most of the other people. And the only difference between myself and them was the combination of appearing middle class, buying my dress, and being a black woman. I have mentioned before the way that class and race differences together are particularly triggering for these people's prejudicial neurosis. The other white students and the tutor clearly saw the bad behavior. But instead of making it known that they found such rudeness unacceptable, they instead blanked their faces and pretended it wasn't happening. They ignored it, legitimizing the mass abnormal behavior. And from this and other experiences, I can only conclude that they want such foolishness to be legitimate. My presence in such an environment and calmly contributing my opinion made them uncomfortable. Reality did not match their delusions of what black people are. And that made them uncomfortable. Because they were not experiencing any cognitive dissonance an hour earlier, when they could happily imagine that I didn't exist. The new reality of me being sat in front of them now needed to be refuted in order to maintain their dream that black people think they, the white people, are more significant than them. This dream is tied to their self-esteem. So, when my presence disrupted it, their self-worth was under attack. Hence why the white people in that class actively ignored the rude foolishness of the other student. They could sympathize with him that me being there made him uncomfortable. So, rather than call him out or indicate to the tutor that his behavior was unacceptable, they instead demonstrated their sympathy for his wounded, fragile self-esteem and guarded against the risk to their own by staying silent. I have now described two examples of white people solidarizing around whiteness. One active in a college environment and one passive during a business course. But white people are capable of resisting these behaviors. And my last example here is from what happened during the first set of sessions in the same business course. The first lesson was, as usual for these things, where people get to be introduced to each other. But as the course progressed, the behavior of the first tutor was very different from the second one. The tutor ensured that every time a student made a comment or answered a question, their statement was acknowledged as valuable. That's a really good point. Thank you for that idea. That's a useful way of looking at that. Thank you for saying that, because I am sure other people were thinking the same thing. The tutor was actively making people want to speak out in order to be complimented, but doing so in a way that rewarded them for letting other people speak too. This created an environment where there was no emotional benefit from bullying other people, where the easiest opportunity to demonstrate that you should be thought of as better than others or be considered higher in the social hierarchy is because you are more considerate in helping others who are lower. in the hierarchy to voice their opinion. Solidarity over the delusion of whiteness was then unnecessary because no one's self-esteem could be threatened by someone else's demonstration of competence. Everyone was being given the opportunity to shine. As I said before, these little petty acts of bullying and social dominance are collectively known today as microaggressions. People from every culture sometimes do these things to try and boost their self-esteem by indirectly denigrating or attacking people who threaten their self-worth. The threat could be intentional in the form of direct acts or unintentional because the other person merely reminds them of triggers their lack of something that they value, wealth, material things, or social status. What I have been describing, though, is where a group supports an individual's microaggressions when the threat is either unintentional or entirely imagined. From my personal experience, it seems that only in cultures predominantly filled with white people does this group defense happen when the threat is an individual's delusion and the members of the group are adults. The group dynamics of this shared behavior are like this. 1. An individual from the group attempts to be white and fails. 2. This hits their self-esteem, their self-worth. 3. They then treat this as though they have been attacked. And now they seek help from the group. It is as though they are screaming, "Help, help, please, help. This person is not bullyable. This person is not behaving subserviently towards me. I am unable to be white to them." 4. Then the rest of the group will join in to try and bully you into submission in order to assure their emotionally fragile member that they are actually important and that they are able to bully you. 5. All this is to defend the fragile person's false belief that they should be considered as superior and their raging sense of inadequacy that they may not be white enough. When you experience microaggressions from a group, not just an individual, maybe at work or upon you entering a room full of white people, this is the delusional rubbish that is going through their heads. The reason the group defends their member is because the hurt that the member feels is real. Real. Regardless of how laughable the delusional neurosis is that make them vulnerable to being hurt. It is for this reason that a previous Latvian housemate of mine tried to get solidarity from me when a group of English people were being denigrating towards her at work. She complained to me, and I am not joking here. I am not. But I am also white like them. I had to work really hard to not burst out laughing at this. I also, of course, had to start distancing myself from this person. Because not only had they obviously decided that it was acceptable that black people are socially ostracized by white people this way, but they were also oblivious to the possibility that I, as a black woman, had not normalized this behavior. And maybe I found it unacceptable. which of course I do. Not only because groups of people should not try to gang up together in some shared delusion of whiteness and then attack people, but because I don't think people should gang up together for any reason and then attack people, particularly when those reasons are idiotic. Hello everyone. Thank you for watching part 4 of my series on whiteness. If you have experienced similar bullying and attacking behavior from a group of white people or any other form of abnormal attacking behavior that white people excuse themselves of when trying to be considered white, and you would like to speak to someone about it, you can contact the Black African and Asian Therapy Network, a national UK organization, NILARI, the Bristol-based support organization, Black River Counseling in South London, or Adira, based in Sheffield. I have placed links and contact details to all these organizations in the description. You can also leave a comment below so that we can have a conversation on this topic. Look out for part 5, where I'll be talking about my experiences with white people using existing bureaucratic systems and organizations to support their prejudices, and how the utilization or weaponization of the belief of whiteness won't always work for them. Please support Nowogh Talks by hitting the like button and subscribing. Hit the notification button below and also leave a comment so that we can continue the discussion.